Hey, it's Aaron from GameEnthus.com, and this video is about Pioneer Rails. Pioneer Rails is a flip and write game about expanding your railroad across a popular, likely fictionalized, Old West, building a network, mining for gold, catching bandits, and more. Pioneer Rails was designed by Matthew Dunstan and Jeffrey D. Allers with art from Javier Inkgolem. It plays one or more players, is for ages 10 and up, and plays in about 45 minutes. Pioneer Rails is also published by Dranda Games. Let's go to the table. Okay, these are the majority of the components in Pioneer Rails. There's a desert sheet in the game, and there's also a forest sheet as well. There's a pad that comes with them. I happen to laminate these. I like laminating, and I don't want to be judged for it. So now you know I like laminating. There's also 15 gold cards, 5 of each type. There's like the sheriff type, I guess the cattle, I don't know, there's 3 types, and then like the one that pertains more to the actual trains, and then the points for them, whoever scores it first, and then whoever scores it afterwards gets half the amount of points. There's some pencils, I laminated them, so I'll be using one of these, but there are pencils, and what often does not come in a lot of these games, a nice thick eraser. People could learn from this publisher, so just saying. I mean, no, these pencils don't have erasers, but look, an eraser. It almost looks like one of those vanilla flavored wafers I ate as a child. I should probably get a bite to eat. Not the point. Not the point at all. So, and then we have 20 playing cards. They're 10 through ace in all 4 suits, so there's 20 cards. So, yeah, nice artwork. Some of them are upside down, but that can be easily rectified. That's better. So we have 20 cards and a first player marker. Because the game kind of functions very similarly, whether it's multiplayer or solo, it is very much a multiplayer solitaire kind of thing, which I don't have a problem with, but I'll get into more of that later. Let me just kind of run you through how the game works. Okay, whoever has the poker chip is the active player, and they're going to draw out 3 cards. They get to pick a card first, and then everybody else playing gets to choose between the remaining cards. So let's say, because of this goal, and let me explain what these goals are. This goal is complete 5 ranches. To complete a ranch, you're essentially separating a ranch from other ranches. You'd have to draw tracks that actually separate the ranches. So now when this ranch is separated, this ranch is now separated from this one, but this one isn't necessarily separated from others. So it's drawing lines, your train, such that you're separating the tracks, so that you're separating the ranches from one another. This one here means to complete 1 fort. The way you complete a lot of these objectives is by the numbers you see at the bottom of them. So for a fort, there's 3 forts? Maybe there's 4. 1, 2, 3. I don't know. There's 3 here. 3 forts. And if you notice, they all have 4 at the bottom of them. What that means is 4 of these lines have to be filled in, meaning you have to have the train go around on 4 sides in order to complete a fort. The gold mines for the nuggets here, it's just 1. That's much simpler. The railroad tracks is 3, which is actually this goal. Whoever completes the actual rail yards, which is this goal here, is to complete 2 rail yards. And because you see there's a 3, 3, 3, that just means you're drawing on 3 of the sides to complete it. And like I said, whoever does them first gets 10 points. Whoever does them anytime afterwards will get half the number of points. Okay, so if we go up here, we zoom in over here, these are the mines. So every time you draw 1 line around many of the numerous mines all over the place, you would just circle one of the mines there, meaning you got it, and you cross it off, meaning you used it. Whenever you complete a bank, which is the next section, so banks require 3 sides to train and run along at least 3 sides. So whenever you complete a bank, you can cross off up to certain numbers of nuggets, meaning you're depositing it There's a max of 4. It says a max of 4. So what that means is, so if I were to complete this bank, and let's say I had 4 nuggets that I had gotten already. Each, you would multiply the number of nuggets times 2, and that's how much money you would earn for completing that bank. So that's not bad. So times 2, so that would be 8. So let's say I had 4, and there's a max of 4 you can deposit, if you will. And I just crossed all 4 of those off, and then I would just write 8. Well, it's kind of hard to see. I know the finer point ones might look better, but it doesn't show up as well. So forgive me. And then as you cross, and then if you go to another bank and complete it, if you have gold, you can deposit it, and then it's a multiplier of 3, and then a multiplier of 4, and then all those will be added up and then totaled up at the end of the game. At the end of the game for nuggets, you get 1 point even if it's crossed off. So any nugget that you earned, period, earned you 1 point towards the end of the game. So you don't have to worry about using them and then not having them anymore. So feel free to use them in the banks to get more points, but then you can also just get a point just for having had it at all. Crossed off or not crossed off, doesn't matter. Okay, then we come down here to the forts. So the forts, like I said before, you have to draw along 4 of the edges in order to complete a fort. And for a fort, you would circle the leftmost fort symbol, and these are just straight points. So 4, 12, and 24. So whichever one you've circled is how many points you would get at the end of the game just for having completed a fort. The cattle, even though what I showed you earlier was me actually drawing around the cattle area itself, it's bigger than that. You can, I guess I'll show you the example in the instructions. So in the example in the instructions for the cattle ranches, because these are mountains, and this is essentially blocked off because of these tracks here. So because there are no other tracks coming over here, this is blocked off, which means that cattle ranch is complete, if you will. And at the end of the game, you would get points equal to the rightmost circled cattle ranch. So I guess it's leftmost circle for the fort, but rightmost circled for the cattle ranches. I'm picking that up. Okay, next section is the rail yard. The rail yard requires that you draw along 3 edges of it. So these are the rail yards. There's 1, there's 2, there's 3. So how rail yards work is at the end of the game, you score points equal to the highest number of towns on a single rail, on a single line, meaning a line coming out of one of the suits, or network. Network meaning 2 lines that have kind of been merged together, which can happen at a certain point. Lines can connect to each other. That actually gives you more scoring opportunity. So it'll be a multiplier for the rightmost circled rail yard symbol. Towns, these are towns. The towns are kind of everywhere. Towns. A rail line terminates at a town. So it just goes into a town and you can't continue once it reaches a town. So if you drew a line into this town here, then that line ends. You can't just pick it up from the other side of the town. Like it ends there. So you gotta be careful about where how you draw into towns, but you're gonna need towns, and I'll explain why in just a second. So so basically it's a multiplier for how many towns are on that individual line or networked lines, and then you do the multiplier, and that's points as well. The towns are pretty clutch. So you start off with 1 town pre-circled, and how the towns work are you earn them and you would circle them as you go along. If you cross off a town, you get a whole bunch of benefits. So by crossing off a town, meaning you're using that town, you get an extra bonus track, meaning just another segment can be drawn, I guess, on that line that you're working with, wherever that might be. In addition to that, you have a couple of options. There's some iconography here. This image on the screen might help more. So you can build a bridge. The bridges will go across the water, as bridges often tend to do. You can build a tunnel in between 2 mountain spaces. pretty cool. You can take a shortcut, meaning you just bifurcate an entire hex. You just go right through it. That's kind of cool. That's called a shortcut. You can switch, meaning you can branch off a line. So instead of coming up this way and then sending it this way, you could branch off a line and maybe head up towards that another town. You know, if that's something you want to do, you could branch off. And then lastly, but crucially, you can change suits. You can have a card that you've picked, selected, what have you, and cross off a town, and you can use whatever suit you want, which is kind of nice. And just like the nuggets, at the end of the game, you would get 1 point for every town that you earned, whether you cross it off and used it or not. So I like that flexibility. You will need it because the turns are pretty tight. So another way the turns work. So there's basically 4 different rounds, if you will. And each turn, you're going to write in whatever suit that you picked. You're going to make poker hands. So you're going to write in whatever suit you got. And those suits will adhere to what's on the side. A pair is worth 1 point, 2 pairs, 3 pairs. All right, the full house. You have a straight, which is worth 5 points. And then 4 of a kind is worth 6. I didn't mention the saloons, but the saloons only require 2 edges to be filled in. You see the saloons aren't here. What the saloons do is, the saloons allow you to double the point value of whatever hand you built in that round. So if you somehow pulled off 4 of a kind and you got a saloon during that round, you would multiply that. And then at the end of all 4 rounds, all these get added up, and then everything else gets added up along with your goals, should you completed any. And you know, once you get a goal, you would just circle it. So you have the 10 goal, 5 goal for each of the 3 different types, and all those make up your points. Your tracks always start from whatever suit that you picked. So let's say I want this ace. So I would write A for ace because this is the first round. And I'm also going to start from the club. You always draw up to 3 spaces to extend your line. So I guess coming out of here, I could go 1, 2, 3. I think this would separate this cattle from all the other cattle, which should count as 1. I think. I don't know, I could be wrong. I'm going to cross that cattle off and then circle that. And that will be a turn. Then the deck is passed to another player. And the other players could have chosen anything but the ace. They could have chosen the 10 or the king. The next player would deal out 3 cards for everybody to see. I swear I shuffled these. And then they would choose. And I'm going to write in the same sheet because I just have 1 sheet that's visible. Well, let's say the first player takes the queen of diamonds, so that's gone. So then these are the 2 options left. And let's say the same player takes the jack. And they're going to start from hearts, and then go 1, 2, 3. Now they haven't completed this bank because they only drew 2 spaces around it, but once they get the other one in there, they're good. Now you can extend a railway. I don't have to. I'm incentivized to pick up from here to keep going to complete this bank. But you can also just start from the other areas, leaving that suit or from where you left off already. But I can't just start from right here unless I use one of my towns. But it goes by pretty fast. I mean, you basically 5 different sets of 3 cards come out. You write the numbers in and hope that you get one of these. You want at least a pair. That's something. You also want to complete a saloon, which is going to be a bit of a challenge because, well, no, I can. Oh, this is a saloon that's very close to the club, so I could maybe make a saloon up there. So whatever I end up getting down here, I can at least double it to get even more points. Yeah, I said a lot of words. That is Pioneer Rails. Pretty tight turns. But there's some mitigation for what you get based on the number of towns that you connect with your railroad. As I said earlier, once you've gone through all the rounds and everything here, you add everything up. Whoever's the most points wins the game. And that is Pioneer Rails. I enjoy Pioneer Rails. I've played it more solo than I have multiplayer, but it is somewhat of a multiplayer solitaire kind of game. So if you're playing it solo, because there really is no player interaction, it's kind of the same. You know, minus the chit-chat, the potential chit-chat of, you know, playing with another person. But I enjoy it. I think it's fun. It's a flip and write that I'll bring out pretty regularly. So I do dig it. At first, I thought it was very limited. Like when I first played it, I thought, wow, you really don't have a chance to do anything. You just have to really be focused. I'm not saying that my scores are really great, because they're not. But I do accomplish a lot of the goals that I set out to. While a lot of verb and write games focus on getting a certain score threshold, which is a thing, the solo mode is more about really accomplishing those goals and finishing kind of what you started to do. So making sure those goals are finished, because for every goal you don't finish in a solo game, you add like 10 points on, things like that. So I don't know, I dig. If you like flip and writes, it's not doing anything wildly different than other flip and writes, but I don't know, it doesn't really have to. It's also an expansion that comes with some additional Joker cards and company reference cards, which give you some abilities. I'm dropping them, which give you some more abilities. And on top of the fact that the other side of the sheet, the forest sheet, has its own goals. Not as many as the desert sheet, but they are there. So I don't know. I think it's a fun game. I think if you like flip and writes, you're probably gonna like Pioneer Rails. It's challenging. It never really feels easy. You never feel like you have quite enough to get things done. But because it plays so quickly, you can always try again. Pioneer Rails. Thank you for watching. Take care, stay safe, and be blessed.